Tonight, millions of people are going to drink alcohol. Almost none of them know the real story of how humans first found it. And here's the strange part. The first creature to ever experience alcohol almost certainly wasn't human. It wasn't invented in a village. It wasn't created by some genius with a clever idea. Whatever found it first wasn't even trying to. And by the end of tonight's story, you're going to find out why some scientists think this discovery didn't just lead to a drink. They think it might have helped lead to farming itself. There's also a 13,000-year-old object buried in a grave in the Middle East that shouldn't make any sense at all. When you hear what it actually is, it won't. None of this started the way you think. It started millions of years before there were any humans around to take credit for it. Picture a hungry afternoon, tens of thousands of years ago. A small group moves low through the trees, the way they do every single day, scanning the ground for anything worth eating. Most of what falls from a tree gets ignored. Too hard, too bitter, not worth the risk. Because there is a risk. Every second spent crouched over fallen fruit is a second spent not watching the grass behind you. Something larger could be 20 feet away right now, and you wouldn't know it until it was too late. But every so often, someone finds a patch of fruit that's been lying there a little too long. Split open. Soft. Smelling sharp. Almost sour. Unlike anything else among the fallen leaves. Hunger doesn't weigh risk the way a full stomach does. So someone eats it anyway. Imagine living your entire life listening for something that wants to kill you. Every twig, every rustle, every bird that suddenly goes silent for no reason. Then, for just a few minutes, none of it feels frightening anymore. That's what happens next. For the first time in their entire life, the forest goes quiet. Not because it actually is. Because something in their head just changed. The constant hum of watching, listening, flinching at every snapped twig. It loosens. Their legs feel lighter than they should. The fear that usually sits behind every single decision goes quiet, just for a little while, for the first time they can remember. The next day, nobody tells them to go back to that tree. Nobody teaches them. Nobody needs to. Their body already has. You probably assumed someone, somewhere eventually invented this. They didn't. That's the whole invention story. Nobody designed it. Nobody brewed anything, mixed anything, or planned anything. A piece of fruit just sat among the fallen leaves a little too long. And by complete accident, it may have become one of the first foods our ancestors deliberately returned to. Not just because it fed them, but because it made them feel different. That habit of chasing rotting fruit wasn't just a human thing. Even fruit flies, creatures with brains smaller than a grain of rice, actively search out the smell of fermentation. It almost always means the same thing to them. Ripe, calorie-rich food close by. Birds do it too. There are documented cases of birds gorging on fermented berries until they genuinely can't fly straight. So scientists started asking an obvious question. If this exact smell has been pulling animals toward food for tens of millions of years, did it shape us too? A researcher named Robert Dudley thought it might have. He called it the drunken monkey hypothesis, the idea that our ancient primate ancestors evolved a real wired-in attraction to that smell because for millions of years it reliably pointed them towards the richest food around. But the story gets even stranger. Something odd kept showing up in the data. Humans, chimpanzees, gorillas. All of them unusually surprisingly good at breaking alcohol down. Far better than you'd expect from animals that supposedly never had much reason to encounter it. Why? Scientists eventually found the answer hidden inside one tiny gene, the same one carried inside your body, right now. Imagine two ancient apes, millions of years ago, both finding the same patch of fermented fruit. One can barely process the alcohol in it, gets sick, learns to avoid it. The other processes it easily, gets the extra calories, and walks away fine. Guess which one has more children? Then one lucky mutation changed everything. Around 10 million years ago, that single change made our ancestors roughly 40 times better at breaking alcohol down. That's not a coincidence. That's a body adapting to a food source that had already been sitting among the fallen leaves for millions of years. We didn't evolve to get drunk. We evolved to find dinner. Feeling lightheaded was just the side effect that came bundled in. At the gentle doses found in real fruit, nowhere close to what we're capable of drinking today. For most of human history, that's all this ever was. Something that happened to you. Not something you made happen. Then archaeologists found something that made absolutely no sense. A stone mortar, 13,000 years old, sitting right next to a grave. The cave is called Rakafet in what's now Israel, and that mortar is covered in tiny traces of fermented grain, the oldest physical proof we have of someone deliberately making this happen, instead of just waiting for fruit to rot on its own. Whoever made what was inside that mortar carried it into a funeral. Someone believed this drink belonged with the dead. And here's the detail that actually rewrites a piece of human history. This happened before farming, before anyone had planted a single deliberate field of grain. Remember what I told you at the very start of this video? You'd assume agriculture came first and this drink came after as just another use for the grain. Maybe not. Some researchers think wanting to keep making this reliably in real quantity may have been part of what pushed people toward growing grain in the first place, not the other way around. It's genuinely debated, far from settled, but the timing alone is enough to make you wonder which one really came first, the desire for this drink or the discovery of farming. What started as a complete accident under a tree had become, by this point, something people built rituals around, something they trusted enough to bring into their most important moments. So here's the actual order of events. Millions of years ago, fruit fell, split open, and fermented completely on its own among the fallen leaves. Animals that could handle it got extra calories. The ones that couldn't, didn't. One gene changed, and our ancestors got 40 times better at processing it. For most of that story, nobody made anything. It just happened in the wild, over and over, long before anyone had a word for it. Then, around 13,000 years ago, someone in a cave finally made it happen on purpose, and thought it mattered enough to bring to a funeral. Nature found it first. We just finally caught up. Long before alcohol became a celebration, it was just nature teaching hungry animals exactly where tomorrow's calories were hiding. Civilization didn't invent alcohol. Civilization simply learned how to make more of something. Evolution had already handed us, for free, underneath a tree nobody was watching, every bottle on every shelf, every toast, every celebration, every single one of them can trace its story back to one forgotten piece of fruit quietly rotting beneath a tree millions of years before anyone was there to see it happen. The first alcohol wasn't invented, it wasn't brewed, it wasn't celebrated, it was a survival signal, and millions of years later we're still following it.